It is the most famous statue on Earth. It has survived pharaohs, conquerors, sandstorms, and the slow erosion of 4,500 years. The Great Sphinx of Giza stands 73 meters long and 20 meters tall, the largest monolithic sculpture ever created by human hands. Or so we were told, because what geologists, radar specialists, and rogue archaeologists have discovered in the last 50 years suggests something far more disturbing. Beneath the Sphinx, beneath the desert floor, something has been waiting, sealed away, hidden from the world. And the people who found it chose silence over truth. Nobody knows exactly when the Sphinx was built. The official answer, around 2500 BC, during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre, is based on almost nothing. There is no inscription anywhere on the Sphinx identifying who built it or when. Not one. The only evidence linking the Sphinx to Khafre is a single damaged stele, the Dream Stele of Thutmose IV, which mentions a cartouche that may or may not contain Khafre's name. It is damaged in precisely the right place to be ambiguous. Convenient. What we do know for certain is this. The ancient Egyptians themselves seem to have no idea who built the Sphinx. When Thutmose IV excavated it around 1400 BC, the Sphinx was already ancient beyond memory, already buried to its neck in sand, already a mystery to the people who built the pyramids beside it. And in the inventory stele, a document that mainstream archaeology has tried very hard to discredit, it states clearly that the Sphinx existed before the pyramids, before the Old Kingdom, before everything we call ancient Egypt. In 1990, independent Egyptologist John Anthony West was examining old photographs of the Sphinx when he noticed something that had been hiding in plain sight for decades. The erosion patterns on the body of the Sphinx were completely different from every other monument on the Giza Plateau. The other monuments, the pyramid temples, the surrounding walls, all showed horizontal erosion patterns caused by wind and sand, classic desert weathering. But the Sphinx and its enclosure showed something entirely different. Deep vertical channels, rounded profiles, the unmistakable signature of one thing: heavy, prolonged rainfall. West contacted Dr. Robert Schoch, a geologist and professor at Boston University, and asked him to take a look. Schoch was skeptical. He was a serious scientist. He had no interest in fringe theories about ancient Egypt. But he went to look, and what he saw changed his career forever. The evidence was unambiguous. The erosion on the Sphinx body was caused by water, specifically by thousands of years of heavy rainfall saturating the limestone and causing deep subsurface weathering. Egypt has not received rainfall significant enough to cause this kind of erosion for at least 10,000 years, which means the Sphinx, or at least the original version of it, was carved before the Egyptian desert became a desert, minimum 10,000 years ago, possibly 12,000, possibly older. Let's be very clear about what 10,000 BC actually means. The official oldest known civilization is Sumer in modern-day Iraq, approximately 5,000 BC. Ancient Egypt itself, the pyramid-building civilization, began around 3,100 BC. Writing was invented around 3,200 BC. Agriculture, the foundation of all civilization, is dated to roughly 10,000 BC in the most favorable estimates. So if the Sphinx was carved 10,000 years ago or earlier, whoever carved it existed at the very dawn of organized human society, or before it. They would have been living in what mainstream archaeology insists was the Stone Age. Hunter-gatherers, people with no writing, no cities, no organized religion. And yet, they carved the largest monolithic statue on Earth, with extraordinary precision, facing due east, aligned to the stars, built to last eternity. This does not fit the story we have been told about human history, not even slightly. And there is only one explanation that fits all of the evidence. there was a civilization before Egypt, a civilization so advanced that it could build on this scale. And it was erased. By time, by flood, by catastrophe, or by those who came after and chose to inherit its secrets rather than share them. In 1987, a team of scientists from Waseda University in Japan arrived at the Giza Plateau with state-of-the-art ground-penetrating radar equipment. Their mission was straightforward: map the geological structure beneath the monuments. Scientific, systematic, uncontroversial. Or so they thought. The team began scanning the plateau methodically, and almost immediately their equipment started returning unusual readings. Beneath the Sphinx's left side, a cavity. Beneath the north side of the Sphinx, a tunnel running in a north-south direction. And directly beneath the Sphinx itself, a large rectangular cavity approximately 8 meters below the surface. The team leader, Dr. Sakuji Yoshimura, was extremely careful in his language. He called them anomalies. He did not claim they were man-made. He submitted his findings to the Egyptian Antiquities Organization and requested permission to continue the investigation. Permission was denied. The Japanese team was given 24 hours to pack up their equipment and leave the site. Their full report was never officially published. Fragments were leaked to researchers years later. But the readings themselves, the data that showed cavities where no natural cavity should exist, those readings did not lie. But decades before the Japanese scientists pointed their radar at the Giza Plateau, a man in Virginia had already described what was down there. Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, was arguably the most documented psychic in American history. Between 1901 and 1945, he gave over 14,000 readings while in a trance state on topics ranging from medicine to theology to lost history. Many of his medical predictions were later verified by doctors. In his readings on ancient Egypt, given in the 1930s, Cayce described in remarkable detail a hidden chamber beneath the right paw of the Sphinx. He called it the Hall of Records. He said it contained the complete documented history of the lost civilization of Atlantis, their science, their technology, their spiritual knowledge, preserved in crystal tablets and stone records, waiting for humanity to be ready to receive them. He predicted the Hall of Records would be discovered between 1996 and 1998. It was not, at least not officially. But here is what is interesting. In 1996 and 1997, Egyptologist Dr. Joseph Shore obtained a rare permit to conduct seismic and radar testing directly in front of the Sphinx. His team reported finding a large chamber beneath the left paw. His permit was then revoked, and all further testing at the site was banned. Make of that what you will. In 1993, a joint team led by geophysicist Thomas Dobecki conducted independent seismic testing around the Sphinx. They tapped the ground around the base of the monument and recorded how the seismic waves traveled through the rock below. The results were extraordinary. Beneath the front of the Sphinx, between the paws, the seismic readings indicated a large rectangular chamber approximately 9 meters below the surface. The chamber was, in Dobecki's careful scientific language, anomalously homogeneous, meaning the rock beneath that area was suspiciously uniform in a way that natural rock formations are not. Natural cavities are irregular, rough-edged, random in shape. Constructed rooms are rectangular, symmetrical, and precise. What the seismic data showed was a room. Not a geological accident, a room. Dobecki's findings were submitted to the Egyptian authorities, and then, once again, the investigation was shut down. Permits revoked, site access denied. The data exists, the analysis exists, but no one has been allowed to look further. Not for 30 years. For decades, the most powerful gatekeeper standing between the world and the Sphinx was one man, Dr. Zahi Hawass. As head of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities from 2002 to 2011, Hawass had near total control over who could excavate, scan, test, or even access the Giza Plateau. He was colorful. He was telegenic. He starred in dozens of television documentaries, and he was absolutely immovable on one subject. There was nothing beneath the Sphinx. He dismissed every researcher who claimed otherwise as a pyramidiot. He revoked permits with no explanation. He banned John Anthony West and Robert Schoch from the Giza Plateau entirely. He denied access to the shore team. He denied access to researchers from Florida State University who wanted to use non-invasive ground-penetrating radar. In 2006, an undercover journalist from an Egyptian newspaper claimed to have witnessed Hawass personally supervising a nighttime excavation directly beneath the Sphinx enclosure, an excavation that never appeared in any official record. Hawass denied the story. The journalist's editor was replaced shortly after. Make no mistake, Zahi Hawass may or may not know what lies beneath the Sphinx, but his behavior for 3 decades has been consistent with a man who knows exactly what is there and has spent his career making sure nobody else finds out. Now let's step back and look at the bigger picture, because the secret beneath the Sphinx cannot be understood in isolation. It is part of something far larger. In 1994, Robert Bauval published his landmark work on what he called the Orion correlation theory. His discovery was startling in its simplicity and overwhelming in its implications. The 3 pyramids of Giza are not randomly placed. They mirror, with extraordinary precision, the 3 belt stars of the constellation Orion, not just in their relative positions, but in their relative sizes, their slight angular offset from north, and their orientation relative to the Nile River, which corresponds to the Milky Way. But here's the critical detail. The correlation is not perfect for the year 2500 BC, when the pyramids were supposedly built. The correlation is perfect for the year 10,500 BC. Because of a phenomenon called precession of the equinoxes, the sky rotates over a cycle of approximately 26,000 years. If you use astronomical software to wind the sky back to 10,500 BC, the 3 belt stars of Orion align with the 3 pyramids exactly. And at that same moment, the spring equinox of 10,500 BC, the constellation Leo rose on the eastern horizon, precisely where the Sphinx is looking. Leo, the lion. And the Sphinx is a lion. The monument was not just built to honor a king. It was built as a celestial calendar, pointing to a precise date in history. A date that someone wanted us to find. A message carved in stone, waiting 10,000 years for someone smart enough to read it. The mainstream archaeological establishment fought back hard against Schoch's geological findings. Their primary counter-argument? The erosion on the Sphinx body was caused not by rainfall, but by wind-blown sand loaded with moisture from the Nile, a process they called salt weathering. Schoch analyzed this argument and rejected it. Salt weathering produces very different erosion profiles, flaky, crumbling surface erosion, not the deep vertical channels present on the Sphinx enclosure. He invited other geologists to examine the site. Every independent geologist who looked agreed with Schoch. The wind and salt explanation did not account for the depth or profile of the erosion. Then the Egyptologists tried a different argument. The Sphinx area might have been subjected to flash flooding from rain that fell on higher ground and drained down into the area. Schoch addressed this too. Flash flooding would create horizontal layering in the erosion pattern. The Sphinx enclosure shows vertical patterns, consistent only with rain falling directly on the stone from above over a prolonged period. Not hours, not days, thousands of years of rainfall. The geological case for the Sphinx being at minimum 10,000 years old has never been successfully refuted. It has only been ignored. And there is a profound difference between those two things. The question of what lies beneath the Sphinx does not exist in a vacuum. The Giza Plateau is riddled with known tunnels, shafts, and underground passages, most of which have never been fully explored. In 1935, archaeologist Salim Hassan, conducting excavations at Giza, discovered a massive system of tunnels cut into the bedrock of the plateau, some of them leading toward the Sphinx from the east. He documented the tunnels and then, under pressure from the Egyptian authorities, stopped his investigation. His field notes from that period contain a remarkable passage. He writes of a subterranean world beneath Giza that could take decades to fully map. Then, in the 1980s, workers installing a sewer system near the Sphinx accidentally broke through into a previously unknown underground passage. Egyptian authorities sealed it within hours. The workers were reportedly told never to speak of it. In 1998, British researchers investigating the area with subsurface radar found evidence of a large man-made shaft beneath the floor of the Sphinx enclosure, going straight down. They were refused permission to investigate further. And perhaps most dramatically, in the famous inventory stela, the ancient text that predates the Old Kingdom, there is a reference to a stairway that descended to the primeval water. A shaft, going straight down, into the water table beneath the Giza Plateau. There is another mystery about the Sphinx that almost nobody talks about, and it may be the most important clue of all. The Sphinx has the body of a lion and the head of a human, but the proportions are all wrong. The body is enormous, massively, powerfully, perfectly formed. The head is far too small for the body. Structural engineers and art historians agree. The Sphinx's head was recarved. The original head, whatever it looked like, was significantly larger. And the most likely candidate for what the original head was? A lion. A full lion. The complete figure of the constellation Leo. Which means the Sphinx was not originally a human-headed lion. It was a lion. A complete lion, carved to represent the constellation Leo precisely as it appeared on the spring equinox horizon of 10,500 BC. At some point, possibly during the reign of Khafra, possibly later, the original lion head was recarved into a human face, the pharaoh's face, claiming ownership of a monument built by someone else thousands of years earlier. In late 2020 and 2021, the Egyptian government undertook what it described as routine conservation work around the Great Sphinx. Equipment arrived, scaffolding went up, and then something unusual happened. Workers began drilling directly into the bedrock in front of the Sphinx's paws, directly above the area where the seismic surveys had detected the underground chamber. The Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities said it was drainage work, necessary to prevent water accumulation at the base of the monument. But independent researchers who observed the work, and satellite imagery analysts who studied the equipment placements, noted something significant. The drilling pattern was not consistent with drainage work. Drainage work requires wide, shallow trenching. What was happening at the Sphinx in 2020 required narrow, very deep drilling, deep enough to reach the chamber detected 12 meters below. No explanation was given. No findings were reported. The scaffolding came down, the site was sealed, and the Sphinx went back to staring at the horizon, waiting. So let us ask the central question directly. If the Hall of Records exists, if there truly is a constructed chamber or series of chambers beneath the Sphinx containing something, what could it be? The evidence points in several directions. The ancient Egyptian texts are our first guide. In the pyramid texts, the oldest religious writings in human history, carved in the pyramids of Saqqara around 2400 BC, there are repeated references to a place called the Duat, the underworld, that lies beneath the Giza Plateau. They describe an entrance to the hidden chamber of Sokar that lies beneath the earth. They describe the secret things of the Duat that are preserved in a sealed place. And in the coffin texts, written a few centuries later, there is an explicit description of the geography of Rostau, the underground realm beneath Giza, including passageways, antechambers, and a final great hall. These are not metaphors. The ancient Egyptians wrote with extraordinary precision. When they said there was something beneath the ground at Giza, they knew something was beneath the ground at Giza. Probably because they had been there. Probably because they inherited it from whoever came before them. And what they found in that hall, what they decided to preserve and to seal and to guard, was something they considered so sacred, so powerful, and so dangerous that it had to be hidden from all but the highest initiates. Something that, if released into the world without proper preparation, would change everything. Here is the maddening reality of 2024. We have technology today that could definitively answer the question of what lies beneath the Sphinx without moving a single stone. Muon tomography, the same technology used to scan the interior of the Great Pyramid in 2017 and discover a previously unknown void, could produce a complete three-dimensional map of everything beneath the Sphinx to a depth of 50 meters. Non-invasive, non-destructive, no digging required. Ground-penetrating radar has improved dramatically since the 1987 Japanese survey. Modern equipment could map the underground complex in extraordinary resolution in a matter of days. LiDAR scanning, thermal imaging, gravimetric surveying. We have half a dozen technologies that could answer this question without touching the monument. Requests to conduct these surveys have been made repeatedly by universities, by independent researchers, by international scientific bodies. The answer from the Egyptian authorities has been consistent: no. Not a conditional no, not a let us study the proposal no, just no. Which leaves only one rational conclusion. They are not refusing because they don't want to find anything. They are refusing because they already know what is there, and they have decided, for reasons that remain their own, that the world should not know. What makes the Hall of Records theory so compelling is not any single piece of evidence. It is the convergence of evidence from completely independent sources across thousands of years. The ancient Egyptians wrote about it in the pyramid texts and the coffin texts. The ancient Greeks wrote about it. Herodotus described underground chambers at Giza of extraordinary complexity that he was not allowed to enter fully. Plato wrote about Atlantis, a civilization destroyed in a catastrophic flood, whose survivors fled to Egypt and brought with them the knowledge of their civilization, preserved in written records. The Arab historian al-Makrizi, writing in the 15th century, described sealed chambers beneath the Giza Plateau, filled with talismans and treasures of science. And Edgar Cayce, in a trance state in 1930s Virginia, described the exact same chamber in the exact same location with the exact same purpose. None of these sources knew each other. None of them could have coordinated their accounts. And yet they all point to the same place, 12 meters beneath the right paw of the Great Sphinx of Giza. Something is there. Something has been there for a very long time. And it is still waiting to be found. Let's assume for a moment that the Hall of Records is real, that it has been found, that inside it are records of a civilization 10,000 years more advanced than we knew. What happens next? Who decides whether to tell the world? The implications are not merely scientific. If there was a civilization before Egypt, if humans were building monuments 12,000 years ago, then every religious tradition on earth must be re-examined. Every creation story, every account of human origins, the Book of Genesis, the Hindu Vedas, every cosmological framework by which billions of people currently orient their lives. The political implications are equally staggering. If the records prove that certain modern nations or peoples are descended from that lost civilization, if they contain property rights, territorial claims, or historical precedents, the geopolitical map of the world could change overnight. And the scientific implications. If that civilization possessed advanced knowledge of physics, astronomy, medicine, or energy, knowledge that contradicts our current scientific paradigm, then the entire edifice of modern science must be rebuilt from the ground up. Is it possible that the people who found the Hall of Records looked at what was inside it and made a decision, a terrible, well-intentioned, catastrophically wrong decision, that the world was not yet ready? The Great Sphinx has been watching us for a very long time. It watched the pyramids being built beside it. It watched pharaohs come and go. It watched the Greeks arrive, then the Romans, then the Arabs. It watched Napoleon's soldiers fire a cannon at its face. It watched Howard Carter discover Tutankhamun. It watched the atomic bomb. It watched us land on the moon. It has watched every civilization that has risen and fallen in its field of view. And it is still watching, still waiting. 10,000 years, or 12,000 or more, is a very long time to guard a secret. But perhaps that was always the point. Perhaps whoever built the Sphinx and placed the Hall of Records beneath it was not hiding something from the world. Perhaps they were preserving something for the world, waiting for a civilization advanced enough, wise enough, and humble enough to receive it. The question is not whether the Hall of Records exists. The evidence for its existence is overwhelming. The question is whether we are ready, and whether the people who found it will ever trust us enough to let us decide that for ourselves. The Sphinx is not going anywhere. It will still be there tomorrow, and the day after, and 1,000 years from now, still watching the sunrise, still pointing east, still keeping the greatest secret in human history.